There you go.
Hi.
Go ahead, Regina.
Hello.
Go ahead, Regina. Go ahead.
Because we've ordered. Yeah, there is 4:30 in Jamaica, no, it's 4:30 here, we're on the same time.
Pastor, your mic is open.
I don't understand what's going on.
Good evening and welcome to our 15th Transforming Lives webinar, which is brought to you by the Belvedere Seventh-day Adventist Church, Georgia, in association with Premier Entertainment Services, Jamaica. It is our hope that these webinars will be transformational and help us to be fitted for the kingdom of God. Today, we'd like to extend some special welcomes. Firstly, to our viewers on both platforms, Zoom and YouTube. We also have joining with us Pastor Lloyd Campbell, all the way from England. We have members of the Central Jamaica Conference Health Department Board. We have Pastor O'Neill Montague from the Sydenham District of Churches, and we also have the board and members of the Sydenham SDA Church. Now they will be joining us for the next 3 Sabbaths as they are having a health evangelistic series that will take them through the span of 2 weeks. And you can also join them on Sabbath mornings at 11 a.m. and in the evenings at 7:30 p.m. We ask that we continue to respect each other's comments during the program. As we've stated before, these are real people with real opinions, hence we may have differences in opinions. However, please keep it respectful, but do not be afraid to share your questions in the comment section as they will be tossed out to the panelists for answers. Now, this week's program, we will be looking on the subject of obesity, a very interesting topic and one that many members in the Seventh-day Adventist Church especially has struggled with. So today we'll be enlightened about obesity. Our moderator this evening is Dr. Karen Lewis, and she holds a doctorate of medicine degree in emergency medicine. She also has 20 years of experience as a physician. I am your host, Regina Bullock, and it is my pleasure to hand over now to our moderator.
Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. Is it still afternoon? Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So this evening into evening, we'll be talking about obesity. And obesity is quite an interesting topic because I do not think we all sometimes get the proper information when it comes on to obesity, and we sometimes don't have all that is necessary for us to address the issue if we're affected by this issue, or even if we know someone who is. Now, a part of our panelists, we have Dr. Errol Bryce. Now, Dr. Errol Bryce is an assistant professor of medicine at Texas Christian University and University of North Texas Medical School. He's a chief of medicine there, and he is also president of New Steps of Health, which is a nonprofit organization with the general. He's also a general conference credential lay evangelist, and he was the former health ministries director at the Texas conference. Now, Dr. Bryce is married to his wife, Hortensia, for 40 years, and they have 3 successful professional children. Dr. Bryce eats a plant-based whole food diet, and he walks about 5 miles most days. And his policy is that he does not eat after 2 p.m. The other panelist that we have is our renowned Pastor Samuel Bulgin, who is the senior pastor of the Atlanta Belvedere Seventh-day Adventist Church for the past 9 years. He has a doctorate in ministries and he has authored 4 books. And the most recent one was just released. Wow, I need to find your book, Pastor. He served as president of the Bermuda Conference, stewardship director, and executive secretary of the Greater North New York Conference. So we welcome our panelists to the program this evening, and I am happy that you have all joined us from wherever you are, and we're going to have a very interesting presentation, which I wanted to be informative. So I needed to put all your questions and all your comments in the chat, and we'll try to address them as soon as possible. Now, until Dr. Bryce is ready, and I see him setting up, so he'll be ready very, very soon, and he'll need to give me a thumbs up when he's ready so I can go ahead. Oh, perfect. So, right. Dr. Bryce is ready. So as I said, we're going to talk about obesity. He's going to do a presentation on obesity. And what is obesity, that you may say? And from the definition, it's a chronic relapsing multifactorial neurobehavioral disease where there's increase in body fat. And as a result of this, there's adipose tissue dysfunction, and it results in a number of things: metabolic, biochemical, physiological health consequences. And Dr. Bryce is going to talk to you about some of the problems that obesity has. I'll ask him a number of questions. We'll go through a number of things. And Dr. Bulgin is going to talk to us about how it comes into us being Christians. Does the Bible really talk about obesity? Does it? Does it really talk about obesity? And there's some things that we're going to be addressing today, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about what's happening here in terms of our life and how to get, because at the end of the day, what do we want? Our bodies are the temple of the living God. And the way we take care of our body just shows us how well we want God to dwell in our lives. Because if we do not take care of what he gives us, we're not good stewards, and not being good stewards, we're not doing what he asks us to do. Because if we're not well, then we cannot absorb what he's given us and also impart it to other people. So without further ado, Dr. Bryce, your turn.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. It's I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. We've been praying a lot, and the Lord's been sharing information with us. And we thank you so much for the invitation. The members of the health board for the Texas conference, for the Central Jamaica conference that's here. We are so delighted that we can come together as a team. The pastors from the different churches will pull their churches in. We want to welcome you and thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to do this. And I wanted to set the stage for the month of November. And I wanted to put this in the context of what I call becoming whole.
We have lost your audio, Doc.
One, you will understand very clearly that becoming whole is about having the mind of Christ. It's about becoming humble, loving, compassionate, self-control, and having a heart for the lost. So this issue with obesity, with hypertension, with diabetes, and with malignancies, cancers, this, I can tell you, these are just symptoms of one major problem. So if we zero in obesity, we zero in hypertension, we zero in on diabetes, they're actually, from my perspective, they're not diseases as we would describe them in the medical literature. From a spiritual perspective, they're symptoms. And we have to approach it from that perspective. The other thing to look at very clearly, and it's not a good idea to start out with bad news, but you've heard a clear definition of obesity. And point after that is that obesity is now determined by the medical community that it is incurable. From obesity stage 1 onwards, it is now decided by medical experience that that obesity is incurable. We have tried many modalities. People lose and they all put it back on. And this is why our perspective is so important. And what we do in the Seventh Adventist Church is so important because we will be showing to the world that there is something that we can do to overcome a condition that is considered incurable. A number of situations can almost apply to the same thing with hypertension, with diabetes. Diabetes in the United States of America, once you get a diabetes diagnosis, is considered a lifetime diagnosis. And so we're dealing with very serious thing, and we have been given the answers to this. So I want to start by telling you a story, and I want to outline to you very, very serious in terms of why we're in the situation they're in now. I want to describe the problem. I want to take the time to outline the principles that we'll be covering. I will be going over these principles repeatedly over the month. And we're not just giving you a bunch of information. Believe me, informing you, making you knowledgeable of all the principles of obesity and hypertension and diabetes and malignancy, I hate to tell you, but it's not going to help you. What will help you is lining up with a process of transformation. I've been at this now for 40 years, and I've tried everything in the book. And I've recognized that it's a process that you must enter into that will help us to understand this. And so I want to start with a story. I was doing a surgery rotation at Kingston Public Hospital with Dr. Trevor McCartney, I think his name was. It was a back-breaking experience. At about 80 men in the men ward and about 42 women surgical floor. And I had some experiences that just blew my mind. And after that rotation, about 6 months later, I was on a bus going from Halfway Tree to Crossroads. And the guy who was conducting the bus was collecting money, came over to me to collect my money, and he reached for my money, and then he said, "Doc, man, is you, Doc?" And I said, I didn't recognize him. And he said, man, Doc, you don't remember me? And I said, and tears started coming to his eyes when he recognized that I didn't connect. And then he said to me, Doc, I was on at KPH on the 3rd floor. And he was telling all the different things, and I just couldn't connect. And it was big, his eyes, the big man was about to cry. And then he said, Doc, hold this money. And he gave all the money that he had in his hand, he gave it to me. And I realized, wow, this guy really trusts me, wherever he is. And then he lifted up his shirt and took off his shirt, and he showed me his chest, showed me his side, and he turned around. And then it clicked. Said, Jerry. And he said, yes, Doc, it's me. And I had put a chest tube on his left side, a chest tube on his right. I stitched up that guy for the whole weekend to save his life. And I said, Jerry, you cannot go back into this life. You're going to change your life. Jerry said to me, Doc, I'm so glad you recognized me, man. I'm so glad, friends. John chapter 1, verses 10 to 12 outlined a picture that is so painful. It said he created the world. He came to the world, and the world did not recognize him. But to those who believe on his name, those who follow his principles, they will have his name, and his name will be in their foreheads. Friends, I want to share with you Revelation chapter 22 and verse 4, where it says, they shall see his face, and his name shall be on their foreheads. This is the real big up that you will get as an individual. This answer towards obesity, hypertension, towards malignancies, cancer, comes from chapter 22 and verse 4. They shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads. It is about recognizing the pursuit of God's love. This is what's about. Recognizing that we have to have the mind of Christ. Philippians 2 and verses 5 to 9 said, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. He humbled himself. He became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. Therefore, God also has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name. This name of God, it is so important in understanding the principle. So it's going to come all the way back to trust. So Jeremiah 31 verses 3 and 4 said, God loved us with an everlasting love. He gave us a perfect plan, friends, Jeremiah 29 verse 11. The plan has everything we need to succeed. And over the month of November, we're going to go through this plan. And all we need to do is to trust him, Proverbs 3 and verse 2, and you will find out once that belief, once the trust is in the right place, he will guide you to a process of total transformation. And I wanted to set that stage up, that it's about trust. I had the privilege of doing an externship at Baylor College of Medicine with Dr. Alan Garber. Dr. Alan Garber is the #1 physician in the world on diabetes. And I used to sit at his feet and listen to him. He would lecture to us first, his residents, before going on the national circuit. This guy writes what we call the protocol. Somebody will understand what that means. They understand what other doctors are supposed to do, how to take care of patients with diabetes. Dr. Allen was about 80 pounds overweight. Knowledge is not the answer. I make that very clear. Telling you what to do is not the answer. It's a process, okay? And I want to outline for the month some principles. You have to make sure that what you're learning is true and it's going to work. So what I've done over the years, I've lined out four principles. If I can't find what I'm talking about, if it's not in the Bible, it may not work. If it's in what we call evidence-based medicine, if I can see it in neuroscience, where the God created the mind, and then you have what is called the longitudinal studies, like for instance, the Adventist Health Study, the Okinawa Health Study, where people live to 110 in perfect health. In other words, if what you're telling me, I need to see people who have lost weight when they say it's not possible, it's incurable. So I'm going to outline for you this month principles that we get from the Bible, principles from evidence-based medicine, principles about neuroscience, principles from people who are actually living these principles and are actually achieving what we're talking about. So it is crucial that you understand where I'm coming from. I'm not getting some long research and throw a lot of statistics of you. I'm going down to the very basics of what actually works. So here is, I want to start with you with a story that of some of these principles that I know really works. I want to introduce you to a patient of mine. Her name is Nelda Brothers. Nelda is, or was maybe around 78, 75. And Nelda lived in the hospital. She would go to the hospital so much. And when she goes, she spends about 3 months in the hospital. And one day she came to me and she said, Dr. Bryce, I am sick and tired of going to the hospital. Is there anything you can help me to prevent me going back to the hospital? Now, Nelda had a staphylococcus infection that from her knee down was black. She couldn't walk. She was restricted to a wheelchair. And Nelda lost 174 pounds in a wheelchair and she couldn't walk. So when I talk, I'm not showing you principles that you can use that will make an incurable condition curable. And so I'm setting the stage for that. We're gonna, when I get a chance, I'll talk to you about Bill and Evelyn Spencer that reverse terminal heart disease, congestive heart failure, completely reverse it. I'm gonna tell you about Raymond Wilson. Yeah, I'll tell you one story each night. But I want you to come with our first thing that we're setting up for the month of November. I call it COPPA, C-O-P-P-A. The first thing that we want to introduce in this weight loss method is choice. Now, doesn't matter how much information you have, unless you get to the point to act on the one and only area you can act on, it won't make sense. So you can get all this information, but until you decide that I am going to get to ideal body weight, no matter what it takes, until you make that choice, this model, this is fat, okay? And this here is a whole, it's big. And this weighs only 5 pounds, okay? And a lot of us are carrying 60 pounds. Some of us are carrying 100 pounds. Some of us are carrying 200 pounds of this. And this here is a new organ that you have created that is actually an endocrine organ. It's a new organ that you have acquired, okay? And, you know, we have all kind of nice names for it. You're chubby and, you know, nice names for this. But this thing, my friend, is deadly. It shortens your life. And so I want to see if I can make it clear to you that we are dealing with a situation that unless you stop and make the decision to lose the weight, to reverse your diabetes, to bring your blood pressure so low that the doctors are forced to take you off your medicine because you're going to pass out. And by the way, I want you to work along with your physicians this month. I don't want you to become your own physician and start taking yourself off your medicines. I don't believe in that. You work along with your physician. Tell him what you're doing and tell him your blood pressure is now 90/60 and you're feeling lightheaded. And tell him what you're doing and he'll be forced to move you. The next point is open. So COPPA. The next step to losing weight is to open your eyes to the pursuit of God's love. We'll be going over this month. Every week as we go, we'll be touching on these points. You see, friends, all of us, Steps to Christ, page 40, says that when Adam and Eve ate the fruit, they were filled with shame and terror. They were filled with shame and terror. But right behind that shame and terror was the question, where are you? And in every one of us, we have used food, cigarettes, cocaine, sex, to try to cover the shame and terror. But you have to open your eyes to see the pursuit of God's love. I was 9 months of age when my mother tried to throw me into the Rycober River that runs right through Spanish Town. And friends, when I think of that, a woman came through the woodworks 2 o'clock one morning and said, Kitty, I didn't know you had a baby. She had to turn back. I sat on her bed in Nottingham, England, 50 years later, and she told me about that. My eyes were open to the pursuit of a God. I have a lot more to talk about open. Prayer. Friends, you have no idea of how we're flying with little power. Power to change or die, change to move forward because we're not. Have you ever prayed and asked God to help you to lose weight? Let me ask you, have you ever prayed and said, Lord, I want to lose this weight. Can you help me? Pray 3 times a day about it, 7 times a day about it. You have no idea of the privilege that we have. We're going to go through some stories on that. And then, friends, with all the choice, with all the looking at Christ's love and all the prayer, if you don't take action, man, you have to set up a plan. You're thinking about it. You're prepared, but you got to take action. You're going to make some plans and you got to take action. So we're going to take you through these steps all through the month as we talk about obesity. And then we're going to tell you about the steps of change: goal setting, mental rehearsal, self-talk, and arousal control. I'm not going to go into it now because I want to rush to this picture. Here, every one of us has shame and terror. And I want to set the stage for this month. This picture here, right at the front, is called the prefrontal cortex. I know it sounds like a big name, but your name might be Mary or John, or in my case, Errol. Everything has a name. It's just a name. And my name is Errol Bryce. This one is prefrontal cortex. It's the frontal lobe. Ellen G. White calls it the higher nature. And I think is Education, page 57, that says the character that we need for heaven can only be obtained when the lower nature is subjected to the higher nature. This is what she's talking about. So here, if Christ's name, we come back to the story, if you believe on him, if you trust him, if you are using his principles and he controls the prefrontal cortex, you have appetite control. As long as the prefrontal cortex is in control, it overrides the lower brain called the limbic system. And that limbic system is the one that eats out of control. My patients have a nice name for it. They call it stress eating. See, Dr. Bryce, I have a problem with stress eating. What it is that we found our own way of dealing with this issue. So I wanted to outline these principles because I will be going over them repeatedly through November so that you can understand it. And you might want to get the tape for this and listen to the tape again so that you will understand what we're dealing with in this. So let me just show a quick nugget to you. One of the biggest principles of weight loss is Genesis 1:29. Now, we have a fancy name for this now in medicine. We don't call it vegetarian or vegan because in medicine we have been downplaying this for years. And so to turn back and accept that it is really the best, we gave it a new name. So it's not a new name. It's called plant-based whole food. That's what it's called now in medicine. Now, if you look at it, remember this longitudinal study I talked to you about? Here we have, and this is just, I'm just touching on one point. Genesis 1:29. It's in the Bible. Evidence-based medicine is now showing that this is the best diet for you. And in neuroscience, it is showing that it is the best thing for glucose control, fat, what we call lipotoxicity and glucotoxicity. They're two big words, but a lot of sugar and a lot of fat, okay? And then the last point, the longitudinal study. So if you go to the Okinawas, the Seventh-day Adventists, for those who are following the program, they eat a plant-based whole food, okay? So let's look at it. Longitudinal study, Adventist health study, the two. For those who are vegans, they eat the plant-based whole food, there is very little diabetes. You jump up to those who are almost 300 times more percentage people who eat meat get diabetes. In the same study, those who are vegetarian on an average of 31 pounds less than those who don't follow this program. And where is it in the Bible? Genesis 1:29. So this is just one principle that I'm talking about to illustrate where I'm going for the month of November. So as I close this introduction, let me recap. Friends, it is very important that we understand that God has given to the Seventh-day Adventist Church everything we need for the coronavirus pandemic that will be given waves and waves over the next 10 years. We are given an immunity that we can walk right into it and it doesn't touch us. The same thing with obesity, with hypertension, with cancers, with diabetes. And let me give you hope. You can never be too old to get back onto this program. You can't be too far to come back on board. And I'm just touching one little point, Genesis 1 and verse 29. So we're going to go through in our discussions and show you how we can implement this plan. I want to talk to you about Genesis 2 and verse 15 and what that means. Somebody plotted the amount of miles that Jesus walked every day. Jesus walked in the 3.5 years an average of 20 miles a day. And this is why this morning I look at my phone before I came in. I clocked 6.7 miles today, almost 7 miles today, walking in the footsteps of Christ because I've accepted this plan. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 1 to 10. Following the pursuit of his love. I pray every time I get about everything because that way I link up with God's power. And I want to show you this month how you can link up with God's power to reverse the diabetes, the hypertension. You cannot do it alone. No matter how hard you try. You need prayer. You have to make the choice. Open your eyes to this love because that is where you will deal with the shame and the terror. You got to pray. You got to make plans. And most of all, you got to take action. It means that I'm hoping that by this November, some of you will go into your closet and clean it out and start over. That is where we hope to take further. So, Ms. Moderator, we're going to pause at this point as we've outlined some principles for the month of November.
Okay, Dr. Bryce, thank you so much. There are some questions that I wanted. I'm looking in the chat. I'm not really seeing this chat being interactive, but there are some questions that I wanted to get out there. In terms of obesity, do you use the CDC recommendation in terms of BMI? And there is underweight, normal weight, excessive weight, then you have the obesity, the different stages. And right. Obesity basically is not necessarily due to totally what we eat. There are a number of things that can cause us to be overweight. Agree?
Yes.
For example, things like genetics play an important role in our weight or body mass. Because, for example, there are people who are, I'm not talking about morbid obesity now. I'm talking about obesity where, for example, could we say that The Rock, is he obese? Because it's an estimation of his body fat and also his muscles and body weight. So he might be overweight in terms of a BMI, but would we say he's obese?
So the BMI that we use, it's not really a very accurate tool for everybody, especially for Black people that tend to have more muscles than Caucasians. However, it's a workable tool. And there are some exceptions. If you have a lot of muscle, for instance, as you point out, you might have a BMI that is will
32.
skew. Right. However, it's a very good tool. It is a usable tool as long as you recognize the variances. Now, overweight, it takes you to a BMI of about 29. 30 and above is class 1 obesity to 35. And 35 and above is class 2, and 40 and above is class 3. So, you know, it gives a guidance for physicians like myself to classify this and try to work with this. Now, the causes of obesity are many. They even have viruses that cause obesity. So this is why I come back to the Bible. And this is why I come back to prayer, because God has to help us. The transformation has to occur. You know, I give you the example. If I tell the story, or I stop eating chicken, for instance, it's a miracle. I tried everything in the book to give up Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I'll tell the story another time, but it was a sheer answer to prayer that God led me to in the situation that I woke out of that situation, and from that day onward, never touched chicken again. At that time, okay, I weighed 210 pounds. And for me to lose the weight, that miracle had to occur.
Okay, I mentioned this thing with genetics because you were talking about long life and health, and I know that genetics play, even though genetics play an important role in our general makeup. I am from a family that lives long. My uncle is born, or was born, 1901. My uncle was born 1901. He's still alive today and in good health, not on any medication. And his lifestyle is one that you can talk about. I mean, it's a one that we exercise a lot, and exercise plays an important role. I hear you say that Jesus walked many, many miles when he was on earth. And unfortunately, in this day and age where people are able to reach wherever they're going by different mode of transportation, walking is not something that a lot of people have placed a lot of emphasis on. And exercise is significant in terms of even maintaining a healthy body weight, and also warding off a lot of illnesses that would beset us if we lived a sedentary lifestyle. Dr. Bryce, I want you to mention a little bit about prevention in terms of childhood obesity. How does this impact us in adulthood?
Okay, all right. So let me touch a little bit on your uncle. It was an uncle, right?
He's my uncle, my mother's brother.
All right. So if you go back and look at your uncle's lifestyle, mm-hmm. When your uncle was a child, mm-hmm. I can almost guarantee you, he used to walk almost 10 miles a day.
Absolutely.
Okay. If you look at my life as a little boy, I used to live in a little place called Thompson Pen or Beacon Hill. I used to walk from Beacon Hill to downtown Spanish Town, which is about 3 miles, just to catch the bus to go to school. the Spanish Town Seventh Adventist Church was 3 miles from where I live. I used to walk in the morning, go walk 3 miles, go back home for lunch, 3 miles, come back home for AY. And my grandmother felt that every time the light in the church is turned on, that
We
she
should
has
be
to be
there.
there. Okay. So I was in church Sunday night, Wednesday night, Friday night, and on Sabbath, I walk 2 miles. That's just to go to church. Okay. And so these principles, it doesn't matter how much minibus and taxes we have now and who has a car, these principles are eternal. So Genesis 2 and verse 15, God called Adam and Eve and said, listen, I need you to do something for me. You see this garden that I made for you? Every flower in this garden is reflective of the love that I have for you. And I want you to take care of it. Now, I don't know how many of you ever cut down a tree or do some gardening or walk 5 miles. You realize if you're doing this all day, that you're not going to be obese. That principles, look here, who you are, where you come from, what kind of genes you wanna put it in. There are some basic things that you need to tend towards eternity. And one of which is a whole lot of exercise. Stretching, lifting, walking, aerobics. It is important to your eternal future. There is an enzyme called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Every time you move a muscle, you release BDNF, which actually reconnects the frontal lobe to override the part of the brain where you're just eating like a dog, eating incessantly. And so that was put in place. Let me tell you something else. GLUT4 transporter is an enzyme that is released. It's like a second insulin. And every time you move, that brings down your blood sugar. So for children, if I were to grow kids now in Jamaica, I would make sure that they're playing a lot. I would make sure that they're walking. I would have to walk with them if I have to. I would put them into sports where they're running a lot, like football, things like that. I would make sure that they have a big, heart-healthy breakfast every morning and make sure they have a good lunch. And I would start training them from now to have a very early and very light supper. It is for children, they need 3 meals a day. But you have to start teach them from a little child what a plant-based whole food is. My grandmother that I grew up with, Miss Caroline Reese, I was a miserable little boy. And I would come home and I would play cricket and I walk in and I smell fried chicken past this house on a Sunday. All you're smelling is fried chicken. And you walk through the gate and you don't smell no fried chicken. And you say to your grandmother, how come we can't have fried chicken? And your grandmother says, Errol, God gave us everything we need. Stop fussing. And I would have my rice and peas. Sometimes she puts a thing in it called susumba. That's right, I forgot that name. You know, it was not the exotic things, but even in her poverty, there was she minimized meat. And there was a lot of red peas, a lot of gungu peas, and rice was never white rice. So even from now as adults, we need to start model it for our children. But if we bringing in the bun and cheese, and Easter time, that's all we eat, and we wonder why our kids turn up to have diabetes.
Right. And Dr. Bryce, you had talked about your hormones, but there's another hormone that is called leptin, right? Which is produced by adipose tissue, which is produced by fat cells, right? And it is known to decrease appetite, but people who are obese tend to have less an impairment of this where leptin doesn't work. And as a result of that, they don't have the appetite suppressant as people who are of normal weight. And I agree with you in terms of exercise. We need to allow our children and even adults. I think a lot of us have become to the point where we're not playing as much. We're not exercising, we're not playing, we're not having fun, running down the road, doing things that are fun with our children. We used to play hopscotch, sighting, do little things with our children. Right. We're not doing that anymore. And as you talked about meals, I grew up with my mother used to tell me, you eat like a breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and supper like a pauper. And that's how you were taught to eat when you were younger. Nowadays, it's a different thing. You think your largest meal should be in the evening time. And we need to change that views with our family members. And a lot of people go without breakfast, which is the most important meal of the day. And it sets you up for a lot of digestive issues. And the other thing I want to reiterate with Dr. Bryce is that, remember, obesity sets us up for so many, it affects absolutely almost every organ of our body.
236 other diseases are brought on to the body because of obesity.
So obesity affects just about every organ of the body. The other thing you know, a lot of us will probably make excuses, and for example, there's some inequalities in terms of where you live, your economic condition, your environment, which play a significant role. Because remember, a lot of food that is available and cheaper are the worst foods we can eat. Right. And there are areas where people have stores that will sell you cheap junk food, and that's readily available than other food. And the other thing is for people to learn how to cook at home. Right. Instead of eating out more. Cook at home.
So let me jump in on the leptin, because I want this month to be very practical. We just touched on the food, and what I'm sharing is principles. So you have to choose God's method. So Genesis 1:29 that we just covered was on food. There is no meat, there's no cheese, there's no chips in all of that. There's no white bread in all of that. There's no bun and cheese in all of that in Genesis 1:29. So leptin. Now, by the way, I have a TED Talk. If you go to YouTube and put in losing weight, Dr. Errol Bryce, just losing weight Errol Bryce, it will come up. And I mentioned a little bit on the enzymes there. Now, let me see if I can bring up this for you. Very important principle as we go through. Here it is. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this. This is a very important principle in weight loss. Now, you have here 6 o'clock in the morning. If you divide your day into 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, 6 o'clock in the morning, so 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night. Now, there's right in the middle, there's a hormone cortisol. Now, I want you to wake up, because this principle is going to help you to lose 100 pounds. So embrace the Genesis 1:29 and go plant-based whole food where nothing is processed. The next step is when you eat, and that is Exodus 16 and verse 21. And we're talking about leptin. So cortisol is highest 6 o'clock in the morning. And if you look by 6 o'clock, it is almost at its lowest. So when you eat your biggest meal first thing in the morning, most of that turns to energy. When you eat your biggest meal after 5 o'clock, most of that turns to fat. Now, here is the big thing. If you exercise, all of your exercise that you do before you eat the first thing in the morning, you'll be burning fat. At that time, your insulin level will be very low. Now, your leptin level, your leptin is what burns the fat. If your insulin level is low, in other words, you haven't eaten all night, you have fasted, your insulin level is low. When that is low, you're converting the fat to glucose, a process called gluconeogenesis. All it means that you're burning the fat to glucose. So if you now exercise, when you get to wake up, when you get this from me right now, just the way we stress Genesis 1:21, 1:29. I'm talking about Exodus 16 and verse 21. If it's not in the Bible, I don't follow it. So if you, when the manna was dropped on earth, it was not a plate of fried dumpling. You had to go pick it up. It took about 2 hours of walking, picking up that manna before you can even put down the pot. So while you're exercising there, that's when in the morning your leptin level is the highest and you're burning fat. So big tip in losing weight is, number one, don't eat that big late meal and get up in the morning early and get some exercise. So women, I know it's dangerous to go out early in the morning by yourself, but right in your living room, even if you're in a wheelchair, you can exercise an hour, 30 minutes, whatever you have. That's when your leptin level is the highest, okay? So have a big breakfast because that's where your cortisol level is very high. And that everything you eat is turning to energy. While if you skip breakfast, skip lunch, or just eat a patty or something like that, and then come home and have this big dinner at night, everything turns to fat. And this is why you have this diabetes, you have high blood pressure, and that's where your melatonin level, right above it, you have this hormone, the melatonin level drives the repair. And while the body's trying to repair, you're eating all this fat, and so mistakes happen, and that's why you call cancer. So I'm giving you now the evidence-based medicine to go with the Bible of Exodus 16:21. So if you don't understand all of that, all I'm saying is get up in the morning and exercise. All you can do is drink a glass of water and exercise, because all that exercise, you're burning the fat. And do not eat at night. So my program is, I was 210 pounds and I was trying to lose this weight. So now I eat a breakfast at 7 o'clock in the morning, so that's my biggest meal. I eat again at 2 o'clock and I don't eat after that till the next morning. And I go out and I walk 30 to 60 minutes every morning and burn that fat all the way down to 178.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bryce. Thank you, Dr. Bryce. Now, past Dr. Bulgin, we've been talking a lot about the Bible. We've been talking a lot about God's ideals for us, as Dr. Bryce has talked about. And he does imply that the Bible, and say that the Bible talks about obesity. The Bible talks about healthful living. The Bible talks about us being well. Now, tell me, does the Bible talk about obesity? Can you find anything about obesity in the Bible, Dr. Bulgin?
What I have found is God's instruction as to how we ought to eat. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that God told Israel to avoid the fat of animals. And there's a good reason for that. And Dr. Bryce has clearly outlined the importance of what we eat and how that affects our health. And so while we might not find the word obesity in scripture, the principles that God has given us to live by and how we ought to eat is God's way of keeping our lives in balance. So clearly,
right.
Clearly,
I was
go ahead.
I was finding some texts, and there's this one in Proverbs 23, verse 20 to 21 that says, "Be not among drunkards or among gluttonous eaters of meat, for the drunkards and the glutton will come to poverty, and slumber will clothe them with rags." And there's another one in Proverbs again, "Be not among drunkards and among gluttonous eaters of meat." And there is Proverbs 23, "And put a knife to your throat if you're given into appetite." So there are some things that, and we should know that not everybody who is obese is gluttonous.
Correct.
Right? Because there are people who are very slim who have gluttony, right? But as Dr. Bryce says, it's our lifestyle where possibly, and that's why I'm happy that he's giving us these principles of living where we understand how we eat, when we eat, and how to incorporate this in our life so that we can have healthier weight and also healthier lives.
Okay.
So we need to understand that not every time it is just gluttony that causes us to be obese. And yes, Dr. Bulgin, does it affect our spiritual life, obesity? How does it impact us in terms of our spiritual life?
Okay. There's a verse in the New Testament that says, "Whatever we do, we're to do to the glory of God." And so I can be eating the right things, but I can be eating it in the wrong manner, and therefore not glorifying God in the way I eat. In fact, there's some vegetarians. There's some what's a new one now? Vegans who are overweight, and the question is, why is that? Because we are taking in more than we're putting out. If you take in more calories than you burn in any given day, it is going to add up to extra weight. And so when we lead a sedentary life and we're taking in 2,000 calories a day and we're not burning but 700, we see where we're going. The trend is in the wrong direction. And so we must maintain the principles that God has given us. And when we do, we're going to be the better for it.
Okay.
Yes.
There's another thing that I found is that it says that we should not make our body image an idol.
That is true.
In terms of having, those, especially women who want to have that body and will do anything to get that image, whatever it takes, and it's not just trying to maintain a healthy weight, but also getting your body to that ideal image that you see portrayed in the media. And there are people who will try to do just about anything. Nowadays, the quick fix, Dr. Bryce, is what it is. Go to the surgeon, get out half of what you have, because you will get that ideal body. And that's not necessarily the way to get your weight to a particular, whether it's going to be bariatric surgery, whether it's going to be plastic surgery, whether it's going to be drugs, because there are a lot, these are things that are being propagated now. The weight loss programs are not necessarily what Dr. Bryce mentions or what he's promoting. There are lots of drugs that people are given, phentermine, topiramate, a lot of these things that are being used to help people to suppress their appetite, to burn their fat, and to lose weight. And how would you address this? Dr. Bryce, I'm sure your patients that you've mentioned, I've seen you mentioned the lady who lost 100 plus pounds being in a wheelchair, and I'm sure she was not taking any weight loss medication or using anything to suppress her appetite. It's just her will, her choice, and her lifestyle that helped her to lose all of this weight. Am I correct, sir?
Yes, thanks for bringing back. Her name is Nelda. And I want to keep this as practical as I can, so that people can walk away and start doing things. So one of the things that Nelda used, she was 174 pounds in a wheelchair. I sat her down and I talked to her. I said, Nelda, you no care what you do, just never eat after 5 o'clock. Go to bed early and make sure there is at least 5 hours that between your last meal and when you put your head down, so that in your system there is nothing unprocessed. Everything is taken care of. The reason for that is you want to lose weight while you're sleeping. So Nelda didn't use any drugs. She didn't use any of the 9 medications that are now available. And by the way, every one of these medications, we have now shown that these medications, you lose the weight, and as soon as you get off it, you put it back on, okay? So I just want to make it clear. So what I'm bringing to you is what God has instituted that will work. So we've been given a little prophet, and she made it clear that for most of us, 2 meals better than 3. She said, try it, okay? Now, so principle number 1 that we gave today that I want you to walk away with is nothing processed, nothing with any meat, nothing from the animal. As the Rastaman said, from the tree to the pot, watch that, okay? So that's the principle. Genesis 1:21. The next thing is meal timing. You want to eat that big breakfast, a big meal during the day, and very little, if anything, for supper, which is the opposite of what we're doing. And the third principle. So Nelda used all of this, and Nelda would cut off eating at 4. She wouldn't eat anything after 4 because she said, Dr. Bryce, I have to be in bed by 9. So 9 o'clock, Nelda was in bed every night. She did 2 hours of exercise in her chair. She did 20 of this, 20 of this, and she does her routine in a chair aerobics, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon. She had 2 meals a day, and she lost 174 pounds and never went back to the hospital until she died. Never went back. And she used to live in the hospital. All of these are principles in the Bible.
Okay, thank you. There was a message in the chat that says most people say that vegetarians have a challenge in getting their vitamin B nutrients. Can you address this?
Okay, so they're talking about vitamin B12.
Correct.
Right. Unfortunately, B12, when God made us, we used to get it somewhere. It is not available in the plant kingdom. So it has to be supplemented, as simple as that. Many of us are vitamin D, not B, or vitamin D, especially if you live in North America, and you're in a building all day, your vitamin D level is also going to be low. And so the other thing to look out for is something called omega-3 fatty acid. Now, you can be a vegan, you can be a vegetarian, you can be plant-based, and you have not only B12, but your vitamin D as well as your omega-3 fatty acid. So let me address all three together, because 93% of the world's population is deficient in omega-3 fatty acid. B12, you have to take a supplement. It's as simple as that. We live in a sinful world. Nothing is perfect. The second thing is we don't get enough sunshine. So you have to take a vitamin D supplement, and we suggest D3. And there are various ways in which some doctors give 1,000, some give 2, some give 3, some give 50,000 once a week.
Correct.
You know, it varies. However your doctor wants to do it, it's okay with me. The third thing is omega-3 fatty acid. We usually get that from fish. Unfortunately, the mercury level of fish now is so high that what I suggest that you get flax seed. Now, I used to love to play cricket. I had no idea that flax seed is the same thing as linseed oil. So my cricket bat used to have more omega-3 fatty acid than I had. So what you do, you get a little coffee grinder, because if you eat the flaxseed straight, it passes through undigested.
Correct.
So you get a little coffee grinder. For those in North America, you know what this
grind
is.
Grind it up, yes.
And you grind it for 5 seconds. Bzzz, and you pour it on your oat groats or your cereal, whatever you're doing. In the morning, your cornmeal porridge, you put it in it, and you do it every day.
Because it swells it up.
That's right. Now, if you don't have a coffee grinder, there's a nice way to do it. Just soak it the night before, okay? So you have about 2 tablespoons or whatever you want, put it in some water, cover it up, and next morning it's a gel. The capsule is broken. You can put that into your cornmeal porridge, or in my case, my oat groats, which is oats before any processing. Anything I eat has to be totally unprocessed. So the B12 supplement, and I would suggest about 1,000 milligrams a day until you get your level up. And then after that, all you need is 1,000 milligram once a month after that. Now, let's say you can't get the supplement. I strongly suggest you get some free-range chicken and have an egg or 2 once a month. That usually is enough. Or if you want to try fish, if you're like my wife, that every time she comes to Jamaica, she can not eat fish. And that's how she gets her B12. Now, I don't believe in being a total extremist so you're going to hurt yourself. We live in a sinful world. And the B12 is very important, because without it, you can be demented without your capacity to think. So even if you have to eat a piece of fish every 3 months, if you can't get the flax seeds, if you can't get the supplements, you know, God reaches you where you are. And don't forget that Jesus himself made a fish breakfast. So I'm not into those extremist positions that, you know, you do what is practical to be in the situation where you have the best health you have, but not with excuses when you can do something better.
Correct. Thank you so much, Dr. Bryce. Thank you so much. And the other thing I was going to talk about is that in the media, it's a lot of it's under the term of obesity and the immune system, because in the media now, what they have stressed is that a lot of children, a lot of people who have died from COVID-19 are obese. And that's something that people have heard, to say that obesity is one of the factors that decreases your morbidity and mortality when it comes on to this virus itself. So it behoves us to make sure that we maintain a proper weight and maintain our immune system, because obesity does impair our immune system.
Yes, another practical tip, talking about COVID. A patient came to me and said, Dr. Bryce, what does the 19 in COVID stands for? So I said, well, the COVID is from coronavirus disease, or so they got the COVID. And 19 is because it was named 2019. She said, no, Dr. Bryce, you're wrong. I said, what do you mean by that? She said, well, you know, Dr. Bryce, 19 represents the average weight that everybody's going to gain in 2020.
19 pounds?
19 pounds, she says, is the average, okay? And that's why they call it 19. But you've touched on a very important point. And here's come with one very important tip. And if you go back to copper, choice. You got to make that decision, set your goal. I set my goal at 178. Now I just changed it to 68. So over the next year, I'm going to what I had when I used to go to Crescent Primary School and Dintil. My high school weight, I'm going back to 168. It was a choice, a decision. Now, the next thing is open. Genesis 3 and verse 9. And this is where it is so important in COVID. Most of us are using food as a drug. People outside of the church, they use sex, they use alcohol, they use a number of different things. But we in the church, we use food as an antidote for what's eating us on the inside. And so it is very important in the weight loss process, and this is a practical step, guys, that I want you to understand. 80% of Jamaicans is born out of wedlock. Just that one factor alone messes up our bodies. Of that 80%, 90% has no father playing a role in the family. So you have at least an adverse child score of at least 2. Next week, we'll go into that. However, if you have any of these stressors, you need something to counteract this. And so this is where you open your eyes to see God's love in your life. So every morning I wake up, I rehearse, Errol, I have loved you with an everlasting love. With love and kindness, I have drawn you. Errol, I will rebuild you and you shall be rebuilt. Every morning I rehearse that over and over again. Another one that I rehearse is, can a woman forget her nursing child and not have compassion on the child of her womb? Yes, she may. But Errol, I will never forget you. Errol, you are in the palm of my hands, and your walls are continually surrounding me. Nothing touches Errol Bryce unless it is approved by God. That's the mentality to which I walk out of my door every morning. So when a piece of bun and cheese or a piece of chicken jumps right into my nose, I know that God loves me and I don't have to stress eat. Principle is very important to recognize that God loves you. Friends, if this principle could ride in your frontal lobe, that alone you lose 100 pounds. Because you can go through life with confidence. All you have to know is to make sure you're praying constantly, because with that you get that power. And any plan that you put in, God will be in it with you so you can take action to lose this weight. So that love principle is very important.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Bulgin, this is where the church comes in. And how effective, how can the church help someone who is struggling with this? I know that Dr. Bryce mentioned a lot about the Bible and studying the Bible, but there are people who are members of the church and they're not members of the church who are struggling with this diet and obesity and problems that they have, especially when it comes on to depression. And Dr. Bryce had alluded to it in terms of having trust in God. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this, Dr. Bulgin, as our last point?
Certainly. We do not argue with the automobile manufacturers. When we go downtown and we buy a new automobile, we familiarize ourselves with the owner's manual. No matter how little money we have, we never substitute water for gasoline, because we know that the automobile that we have just purchased runs on gasoline, not on water. So we take the manufacturer's recommendations seriously. We take the automobile in for service at regular intervals because that's what they recommend. However, we, even among Christians who acknowledge that we were made by God, made in the image of God, don't always take what is in the Bible seriously. And so we think we know better. And so we inundate ourselves with an inordinate amount of processed foods. We have invented the electricity, so we stay up until after midnight every day of the week. And then on Sabbaths, we're so tired that we say we've got to rest, and so we don't assemble ourselves together. And Ellen White makes it very clear that what we eat does impact our spirituality. For example, not every member of the church subscribes to the values that we expose as Seventh-day Adventists, even though they know that Seventh-day Adventists who are vegetarians live 7.5 years longer than the general population. They say, I just have to have my chicken, I just have to have my meat, I just have to do this, I just have to do the other. God knows us better than we know ourselves. He has given us a diet. And while the church has a great health message, not all of our members subscribe to the health principles. And I wish sometimes as a pastor, if I could just snap my finger and get all my members to accept that reality, but be it far from me, because we have the principle of choice, like Dr. Bryce has so eloquently set forth. We have choice. And God does not force us to do what he wants us to do. Neither can I, as a pastor, force my members to do what I think they should do. But as I live my life, as I relate to them, I can say, see, this is what it does. When in 1978, when I got married, I was 165 pounds. Today, I am 175 pounds. What do? I know that if I take in more than I put out, I'm going to increase my weight. God wants me to function optimally. So here we come again. If I have the wrong motivation for losing weight, it won't last. If I do it for the glory of God, God
Amen.
will sustain me over time. But if I am simply doing it because I want to compete with my neighbor, or I want to compete with somebody else, when the motivation for competition is gone, there goes the thing out the window. God wants us to live principled lives. And when we live by the principles, we reap the benefit. There will be no dullness in our brain. There will be no, our senses won't be paralyzed because we have eaten some things that God didn't intend for us to eat.
Okay.
Dr. Baldwin, can I add something?
Yes.
Thank you so much for making those points. Those are excellent points, man. And I especially love the one with the car.
Oh, amen.
This is beautiful.
To use it.
Let me throw in one little tidbit. I want to keep this as practical. For those who are listening, can walk away with some principles. The next one in the role of the church. You cannot lose weight alone. you need the support of somebody else with you.
Absolutely.
And this is where the church comes in. So we should have small groups. 3 people coming together say, listen, I make the choice to lose weight, but tell you the truth, I've made this decision a million times already.
Come here.
I've lost 1 million pounds and I can't lose it.
It's right there.
So the church now can come together. And this is where the church, having small groups where you're working together, you say, listen, sister, that piece of pork is not gonna help you to lose the weight. And you show them God's manual. But in the context of community, where you have small groups, so all the churches should have weight loss groups. And you reach out to somebody outside of the church to say, sister, you want to lose the weight? You know how I lost mine? How I moved from a size 30 dress to a size 12? I was part of this group. And it is within this context that you use a weight loss program as an evangelistic program.
Absolutely.
So as you're losing weight, you're winning souls.
True.
You see, so this method that God gave us, the right gasoline that people are out there using water, you in a context of love, God's love flowing through you, you use that to flow through them, you bring them into the small groups and then into the baptismal pool.
That is true, Dr. Bryce, because remember, there was one time when if you ask somebody who is an Adventist, what would they say? They keep the Sabbath and they don't eat meat.
Yeah, they don't eat pork.
No, it's true. They don't.
Yeah,
They know what an Adventist is because they know. If you say you're vegetarian, no, a lot of people are vegetarian, but there are times when if you used to say I'm a vegetarian, they say, "Are you an Adventist?"
Yes, exactly.
Just like if you say you go to church on Sabbath, are you an Adventist? Those are two things. And there's a question in the chat, Dr. Bryce. It says, is it okay to eat fruits and nuts and vegetable or fruits and nuts between meals? How do you address eating between meals, fruits, nuts, and vegetable?
Thank you so much. For that person who asked that question, that was God inspired, because we didn't touch it, and I'm so glad I able to touch this. Friends, it comes back to the principles. God gave us the science before the science. Long before it became evident in evidence-based medicine. There's a huge study that talked about 6 small meals
for the day
versus 2 or 3 meals and the effect on the physiology of the body. And I actually have it in my PowerPoints. One day when I go over it, I can go over it with you. But just to answer this question right now, science has clearly shown that eating between meals is death. So it doesn't matter how healthy the food is. You eat, you give the digestive system a chance to go through a cycle of 5 hours and to break down, replenish, then you go through another cycle. So when you eat between meals, you destroy that process. We were given that June 21, 1863, 100 years before science started talking about this. So my sister, my brother, who will send that message, it comes right back to choosing the plan. God came, he died for us. He gave us this plan that has everything, all we have to do is just follow. The only reason we talk about 6 small meals, number one, physicians don't know anything about diet. It came from the dietitians. And the dietitians came up with this because when you're eating processed foods, within 2 hours, your blood sugar goes from a normal of about 70 down to about 40. and you have to eat again. In my office, I'm in the middle of this building. You have physicians on this side and physicians on that side. And every 2 hours, they pass in my office going into the break room to get their coffee and donuts and to go back to their patients. And the blood sugar goes up to the roof, and in 2 hours it crashes. And they have to eat again. But if you're eating a plant-based whole food, your blood sugar goes up. It stays stable for 5 hours. And you're not hungry again when you're eating properly. As a matter of fact, if you're eating properly, you eat at 2 o'clock, you're not hungry again until the next morning. It's not easy. It took me 2 years fighting tooth and nail to quit eating at nights. But that issue of eating between meals, doesn't matter how healthy it is devised by the dietitian trying to do away with this glucose crash in between meals. So it's not something that's healthy. And as a church, it was given to us over 150 years ago. But we shouldn't do that.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bryce. And thank you, Dr. Budgeon. Anything you want to say to close? If there's nothing, I know we had a very informative session this evening, very informative, and it takes us back to the Bible. Everything we've discussed about obesity and how it affects us, it takes us back to the Bible. These principles were given to us from the moment God made man. From he created man, and as Dr. Budgeon said, when you buy an automobile, you do not question the manufacturer's. You do not question his what you say, what he says, how you're to maintain his vehicle. You do not question the principles that you are to take. And anyhow you go against those principles, you mash up your car. Correct? And you have to buy a new one. And you gotta buy a new one. Unfortunately, we've gotten only one of me. There's no second me.
That's right.
So if I do not hold, there's a question that just came in, and I think we have to address it. It says diabetics are told to eat often. Explain. But we are actually given, there's only one of me. There's only one Errol Bryce. There's only one Samuel Bulgin. And if we mash up that person, I cannot go to the store and buy another me. I cannot go back to God and say, please make another me. Because anything that we'll be making 2000, which is 11/7/2020, will not be me. Okay? So it behoves us to follow the principles and the ideals that were given for us to have a healthy life. Because as having healthy lives, we're carrying out the mandate that God gives us to make disciples, to reach out to other people. And I love what Dr. Bryce said. He said, this is one area, because everybody is into weight loss. Everybody is into maintaining an ideal weight, an ideal body, an ideal everything. There's so much things that are out there, surgeries. Most people are not using diet and other things in order to maintain this. And if as a church, we can have groups and we can maintain the principles and practice what we've been taught and practice what God has given, the mandates that he's given to us, other people will see. And as a result, we can lead people to God. And that's very important. And thank you for saying that, Dr. Bryce, because it's very, very important. But before we leave, we have to address this. It says diabetics are told to eat often. Can you expand on this?
Yeah, I am so glad that question came up, because actually it's something that I should have addressed right from the beginning. We're in a sinful world, and a number of individuals have already progressed to the point where they're on insulin. Some people are on insulin pumps. Some people are taking multiple doses of Levemir and Humalog and all these different 720, NPH, different types of insulin and all that is done. So I might have mentioned it, but if I didn't, let me emphasize this. It's very important as we go through this process, you partner with your physician. You partner with your physician. Go into your physician and let them know that you want to start making some choices, some helpful choices, and you want to work with him. And he's going to say, no, just take your medicines. Okay, you can't get off your medicines. He's going to, and you just smile at him and say, doctor, I want you to work with me on this. So you got to convince him that I want you to work on me. You can say to him, have you heard of Dr. Bryce? I have gotten those calls. I have a lot of seminars and I tell them, tell your physician to call me. I'm a professor of medicine. I teach doctors how to be doctors. So I'm not talking from a position of ignorance. So you need to go in and talk with your physician. And then secondly, the physician can change up when you take your medicine in such a way that you don't have to be eating these small meals. As a matter of fact, it is much better for the physician if you're not eating every 2 hours. He can program your
insulin,
insulin dosage, your medication to work with you. Okay, so I just want to let you know it's done, but don't do it on your own. Now, what about?
And I agree, Dr. Bryce, what you can do too is bring him the evidence. You can check, you can keep a log of your blood sugar and bring that evidence to him. When he sees it going down to 60, he's going to say, oh my God, you're getting hypoglycemic, let's change. So do that. Give him the evidence. Say, doc, this is what my blood sugar is. This is what I am doing. And this is what my blood sugar is. This is my log. You have evidence to show him that your lifestyle is making a difference to your hypoglycemic control. And he's got to adjust that medication because he does not want you to become hypoglycemic and end up in a coma.
All right, and let me interject as well for those. Now, you're also trying to get your physician into the kingdom. Okay? I don't want you to forget that. He has a soul too. When you go to him and all the other physicians, their HbA1c, all the other patients their HbA1c is 7, 8, 9, 10. And yours is running 5.7, 5.2, and he has you on all of these. It's a chance for you to tell him where you got this information from. Physicians have joined my practice because of patients who have gone to him and said, I go to a patient, Dr. Bryce, and this is what he does. And this is the results I'm getting. And the physician himself, who is a diabetic, comes to me as a patient. Now, everything that we do, God gave it to us to finish the work. Don't forget that, friends, that becoming well, changing your diet, working with your physician is a chance to point them to the God who loves him. God is pursuing that physician. And it may be through you that you can get him to the kingdom.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This was such an informative and a blessing in terms of meeting our needs. And it's not just for people who are obese. We're preventative. We're not actually trying to when the horse has gone through the gate, try to get it back. We're trying to keep the horse inside the pasture and not go through the gate. So we're trying to make sure that we stay healthy and we do not, we actually can maintain a healthy lifestyle, healthy eating habits, healthy sleep, praying to God, taking the depression. This is a very depressing world. And if we can maintain a proper lifestyle and we can trust in God and keep all those principles that He has given to us. And the church is a hospital. The church is where we're supposed to be getting, if we're sick, if we need somebody to talk to, if we are depressed, if we need a shoulder to lean on. That's where the church comes in, and we have to make sure that we're available. And if we have the information, we should be able to share it. So we have to avail ourselves with as much information as possible that we can help each other, help ourselves, and help those people who do not know.
Amen.
Okay, Miss Bullock?
All right, thank you, Dr. Lewis. That was a very informative session. I'm so thankful that we're on the topic of health. And I love that Dr. Bryce kept on emphasizing that we have all that we need already at our fingertips. It's just for us to unlock it, because God has given us every single thing that we need to stay in good health. And I'm sure that everybody that is watching, including myself, will enjoy these coming weeks as we explore more about the health message that we have been given. Now, again, I just want to thank Dr. Lewis, our moderator. You did a fantastic job. We want to thank Dr. Bryce for your presentation. And I'm sure that as you continue to present, it will only get better and we will just continue to be blessed. Now, next week, we're going, an oncologist will be joining us, and we will be discussing the topic of cancer. So you definitely don't want to miss that discussion. And to our viewers on YouTube and Zoom, we thank you for, remaining faithful and finishing this session with us. And I hope that you'll come join next week, because I guarantee it will be another interesting discussion. Now we'll have our Vespers by Dr. Bulgin.
Hey, thank you very much. I'd like for you to look with me, if you are able, at Second Corinthians chapter 2, verses 15 and 16. It says, "For we are to God the fragrance of Christ among those who are being saved and among those who are perishing. To the one we are the aroma of death leading to death, and to the other the aroma of life leading to life. And who is sufficient for these things?" The fragrance of God, God's fragrance to the world. For me, that is so critical. That is so central. It ties back into the counsel that Paul provides us, that whatever we do, we must do to the glory of God. And so as Christians, we are positioned as an aroma, both to the saved and the unsaved. I remember growing up in Jamaica, and there were times when I had to pass by Appleton Estate, and I could not avoid the aroma of the estate, the sugar and the stuff that went on there. And we know that aroma, you cannot see it, but you can sense it. You appreciate it with your senses. And so when we go out into the week ahead of us, we must keep this in mind, that God has made us an aroma. What will people smell when we pass them by, when they see us, when they interact with us? I'm challenging you, because Jesus says He came that we might have life and have it more abundantly. So this week, go out there and apply the principles of health, and let the world see or smell the aroma of God onto life, the abundant life that He wants all of us to have. We are the aroma of God. Let the folks smell something wonderful of Jesus Christ and begin to ask the question, what can I do to look like, feel like, experience the life that you have? And we can introduce them to the health message, because surely when everyone wants to be healthy, and we all can be healthy, because I'm healthy, that doesn't mean that you cannot be healthy. God has given it to the world let's be the fragrance of Christ to the world around us this week. Let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you so much for calling us to this high and lofty position to be the fragrance of Christ to the world, not only to our brothers and sisters within the faith, but those who have not yet come to know you. May we share this good news. May we share these principles so that they too can come to know and into a saving relationship with you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for allowing us this time together. May we truly be the fragrance of life to the world this week. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. God bless you. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. See you next week. Thanks, Dr. Bryce.
Thank
That
you.
was very informative.
We're still on YouTube. Please be quiet a little bit. Please hold on.